Hi, I'm Deborah, a naturopath here at Nourish Health and Wellness in Petone. So I'm live tonight presenting this coping webinar, which I've done a couple of times during lockdown and under the guise of coping with COVID. So I've changed it just a little bit for the different levels that we're at here in New Zealand. So I'm just going to start my little presentation and bear with me. No, it's not letting me do it. Hang on a second. There's always a technical glitch when you don't want it. Oh, it's not. Oh, there we go. Let's try that one again. Ah, there we go. Okay, back on board. All right. Why is it that when I'm live and recording, these things don't work the way that I want to? I've had a couple of people just pop off, actually. I think there's some issues with Zoom. So hopefully, if you're catching this later, the recording is all good. Otherwise, I'm going to be having to do it again. So welcome. Like I said, my name's Deborah. I'm a naturopath, and just want to run through this little disclaimer, which basically says I'm not here to treat or diagnose. I'm not about to prescribe any medications or any particular course of action as a result of anything that crops up this evening. And please just bear in mind that the information is a summary. It's for educational purposes. It's as valid and current as I can make it as at right now, and I've included references where I have them at the very end of the presentation. So you'll get a copy of the handout notes. If you pre-registered for this, then you'll get sent that. If you would like to receive them and you're watching this later, you'll just need to email me and say, hey, I'm watching the webinar, I've watched the webinar, can I get the handouts and the links, please? So I'm just going to move on to the next bit, which explains a little bit about why I'm doing this. So this kind of came up, I think, when Wellington was in level 4 lockdown, and I was chatting to a lot of people, and I'd done a little bit in lockdown last year where I think I got really good feedback just sort of on staying connected. So I decided to run these, and I did a couple of them. They were reasonably popular. And it really is just all about having a conversation around coping and supporting our health and well-being in this time of uncertainty. And I think with the you know, we trucked along here in New Zealand for quite some time quite happily, and then all of a sudden we're in lockdown. I think it's left everybody feeling a little bit kind of fragile. My goal with this is just to share information, to get questions and ask questions and engage with the community. So this week, for the organisation that I belong to, which is Naturopaths and Medical Herbalists of New Zealand, NMHNZ, it's Naturopathic Medicine Week. So that's why I'm running this as a part of that. And I encourage people to just get the conversation going, kōrero, with your community, and find out what people need and use the resources that are available to you. Have a look at what else is happening as part of Naturopathic Medicine Week. There might be something in there that resonates with you or someone that you know. If you have suggestions or comments or feedback, please email deborah@nourishe.co.nz. And my goal really with this, my final outcome with this, is to provide you with some useful resources. So at the end, there's some stuff that I'll send out to the people that are registered. And if you're watching it on replay, please just feel free to get in touch with me, and I will be able to email those through to you. So really, this is all about mental wellness, and I put at the top of the list, what is mental wellness, because it does look very, very different for everybody. And I always think that our health and our general, the way that we look, the way that we're built is different from person to person. Mental wellness is just a component of our overall health and well-being. And I started this sort of concept of starting with yourself. So it's really, really important to look after you before you do anything for anybody else. Your team of 5 million starts with you. My team of 5 million starts with me. If I'm not okay, I don't think I can be okay for people that are around me, be they friends, family, and just wider community and acquaintances. So what I did under this heading was just list 3 key areas of mental health that come up a lot in conversation in my clinic and around the community, which are anxiety, depression and seasonal affective disorder. So anxiety being top of the list at the moment because there is a lot of it around. There's different types of anxiety, but the one that we associate most with the work that I do is what we call general anxiety disorder, and it's something that is a severe ongoing condition that interferes with daily activities. It can occur at any age, so you might have it your whole life, you might just develop it one day and not really quite fully know what it is. The condition itself, the anxiety or the generalized anxiety, is similar to panic disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, and other types of anxiety. People that worry, so they're constant worry, restlessness, inability to concentrate, inability to focus on a conversation. So the restlessness is someone who, scoffs their dinner really quickly or gets up and runs around. They can't sit still. They can't just kind of focus on one activity. And you can put your ADD things in there a little bit as well, but they're on a slightly different spectrum. But with those comes anxiety, and it builds and bubbles like a little boiling cauldron or a pot on the stove, and it can become a really big thing that interferes with your day. Treatment options are usually counselling and medication, antidepressants, which, in my personal opinion, I think are overprescribed, and I think there's a lot of people out there that would possibly agree with me. So we always look from a naturopathic perspective first at nutrition and herbs and ways that we can get healthy nutrients into the body, and I'll talk a little bit about that further on in the conversation. Panic disorder is something that's pretty intense and uncontrollable. So someone that has a panic attack, you can't just kind of get them to take a breath and calm down. Paper bag thing works really well. So it's about getting that settling down that nervous system and calming the body down, getting a bit of carbon dioxide and then just sedate the nervous system. But it is also part of an anxiety spectrum. And the other one that comes up with anxiety is the social phobias. So if you think of modern society, with the way that we communicate is often via social media, it's via text. We don't have a lot of interpersonal personal conversations. We don't often see people face to face. We very rarely talk to people on the phone. We're looking at this kind of isolation type thing. And social phobias include things like an extreme fear of criticism, fear of situations in which we think we might be judged, embarrassed or humiliated, concern about offending someone. The joke in my world is that I don't seem to worry about offending people. I don't like offending people, but my social shield doesn't allow me to know when I perhaps am sometimes. And it often leads to social withdrawal. So things like imposter syndrome, which is the modern term for feeling like we're kind of living someone else's life in a way, is part of that sort of social phobia thing. So I guess lockdowns and time out kind of gives people that have that an opportunity just to retreat into themselves and into their world quite safely. But I don't think it's particularly healthy. I think it's really important to engage in the community. And for people with social anxiety disorder, I mean, everyday social interactions cause irrational anxiety, so it just becomes out of control. And I think one of the things that we need to do in our world is actually just learn what coping skills work for us and what doesn't, and make sure that we have on hand a sense of when that's starting to get out of control, what do I need to do to make myself calm down and be safe again. It's also that fear and the self-consciousness and the embarrassment thing, so nobody really wants that. Seasonal affective disorder I had on here somewhere, oops, here we go, is it obviously affects many people. Oh, well, depression, actually. I skipped over the whole depression bit. So I've got anxiety depression because the anxiety can lead to depression can lead to anxiety, but it's usually kind of like an anxiety depression thing or just a straight depression. It's equated to a day that never ends, and I've got a image coming up with a link to a brochure that the World Health Organization has on their website that you can just click on and download, which I think is really useful. And the World Health Organization, who sort of governs our worldwide health things. There's a lot of really good resources in there. I do recommend checking out their website and having a look for some stuff if you think you want to pursue that for someone or for yourself. There's an estimate that depression will be the #1 health concern in both developed and developing countries by 2030, and we're heading there rapidly. COVID in itself is not the cause of that, but I think it's the straw that broke the camel's back. So it was kind of like that last hitching rail is one too many things. Social isolation and loneliness amongst older people are very widespread as well. So about 20 to 34%, depending on where you're looking, in many regions such as India, Asia, the USA, continental USA, are high, and they're in that percentage with rates and institutions. So if we think of an institution as a retirement village or a retirement home, those rates are on the rise as well. And I think, so what happens with social isolation is that it does tend to shorten the lifespan. It's not having that contact, it's not stimulating the brain, you retreat into yourself, you don't eat, you just kind of mope around on the couch and don't get up. So there's activity, movement and socialization is really, really important as we age, as much as it's so important when we're young. In the middle years, we tend to be a little bit more self-sufficient, and then obviously as we get older, we rely on the people around us to kind of keep that cognitive function going. The physical health consequences are endless: cardiovascular disease and stroke, mental health, such as cognitive decline, dementia, depression, suicidal tendencies and suicide. And the rate in the over 70s is going up in New Zealand. There's a lot of information around that. The other thing that happens with social isolation and loneliness is that it becomes a financial burden on our society. So this is not restricted just to the elderly people, it's also across all the age groups. And I think at the moment we're starting to see that a bit in New Zealand. There's organisations such as universities who are laying off teachers and lecturers because we haven't got the international students. So all of a sudden, there's all these people that have had a job through this whole pandemic, and now we're seeing a number of people who will be unemployed and will be then looking around. Fortunately for New Zealand, we've got quite a good level of internal growth at the moment as well, but it is a burden, and whether or not they can then get a job at the same level of salary that they were on becomes another issue for them to deal with. There's also information out there on COVID-related organic depression. So that's depression that develops from COVID itself. Cognitive deficits, chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia are reported in post-COVID conditions. And the other one is seasonal affective disorder. So when I wrote this, it was before daylight savings hit, and it's something that I see a lot of in my clinic. So I work a lot with stressed out people and people with mental health issues. Seasonal affective disorder is one of those things that in New Zealand, so the very bottom countries of the earth and the very top countries of the earth tend to have restricted daylight. So we're not as far down as some are, as far north, if that makes sense. Sorry if I'm talking gibberish. We don't have the 24-hour daylight and the 23.5-hour nights that the very far northern countries do. But what we lack in New Zealand is the quality sunlight. So for some people, it's a regular occurrence. For others, they might have a day here and there. And I think often we are prescribed melatonin or vitamin D for these. The reality is, again, we need to recognise that that's happening. And one of my clients calls it a lights out day, and she said it's like I'm walking around in grey, and I can relate to that because I often equate mental health plummets to a grey day. Often referred to as a blue day, so blue being a little bit depressed. And I think we've got to consider that before we rush off to our GP and say, oh my gosh, I'm feeling really depressed, I'm not happy with how things are going. Just have a look at the weather, see what the daylight's doing, see what you need to do. Do you need a bit of fish in your diet? Do you need to take some vitamin D? Do you need to top up with something? Do you need to get outside and do some exercise? Even though it's not sunny and warm, it might be bucketing down with rain and freezing cold. It can be quite invigorating. And having got a puppy last year, I can vouch for the getting out in the freezing nights. It's certainly not fun, but sometimes we just go around the block. It's literally about 900 meters. It takes me about 10 minutes. And, you know, it's enough to come home. You feel like you've refreshed and restarted, and it's kind of like an end to the day and a start to the night. So it can be really good. Sometimes it's a longer term condition. So it then becomes a whole question of things like daylight savings. So it's usually in the winter months when we have shorter days. My advice for any kind of mental wellness stuff is to seek treatment and or advice from whomever you feel is going to be the right person for you. And everyone will relate to different types of therapies, different types of medications, different types of nutritional prescriptions, whatever it is that you're doing. Make sure that you're present in your space. So, you know, take stock of where you are. Do you need to just sit down for 10 minutes and just kind of calm yourself, breathe, do something, write a list, make sure that you're warm, make sure that you're fed, just keep breathing in and out, nice and evenly. Find some stillness, even if you just sit and hang out with yourself for a few minutes. And that's something that I know a lot of people find really hard to do. I have no problem hanging out with myself. I can sit there for hours and stare at the wall. And the other thing is that I talk about a lot with my clients is the concept of mental hygiene. So we often talk about hygiene as being, you know, the cleanliness thing. So you want to keep your mental area well and clean. So things like just keeping the mind clear of clutter, I guess is probably a better term. Self-care is really the concept here. So we're talking sleep hygiene, rest, exercise, diet and nutrition, socializing, connecting with nature, with yourself, with others, passion, pleasure, joy activities, getting creative, throwing some paint on a page, coloring in something, and just the concept of routine versus schedule. So routine is things that we do every day, but it doesn't necessarily matter when we do them in the day. A schedule is like, I have to do this by 8 o'clock, I have to do this by 9 o'clock. That can be quite anxiety inducing. So I would recommend kind of going through a routine. And something I've started doing again, which I used to do many years ago when I was much younger and could juggle lots of balls in the air quite happily, is just writing out my list to do for the next day and not making it incredibly long. If there's 100 things I need to do, I know I'm only going to get maybe half a dozen of them done. So the half a dozen most important ones go on the list, and the rest just sit there until I can put them on there. And sometimes they come up and bite me, but that's okay. I can live with that. And also just prioritizing and putting some boundaries in place, so that making sure that you're not saying yes to too many things. Guilty. Anyway. So this is something that I have available on my website, and then you'll get sent the link to be able to access these. So these are what I've called my top 5, and there's about 3 on there at the moment. I kind of create them periodically, and this one's just kind of like a daily health check. So the concept here is that it's not an app on your phone. You're not spending more time on your screen. You're checking in with yourself. You might print it out, or you might just create your own on a piece of paper. You stick it on your fridge where you see it every day. And I like filling things in with color. So I might, you know, allocate some points using a colored pen or a pencil. And basically all you're doing is checking in on these 5 things every day. So we look at things like our energy levels, our immune system, you know, energy levels being high or low. Are we feeling enthusiastic? Are we feeling a bit flat? Immune system, am I well? Have I got a cold? Is something happening, or is it just a different day? Bear in mind that your body's going to be different every day anyway. A physical check, you know, have I got any unusual aches and pains? How's that knee injury? How's my swollen ankle today? You know, do I need to top up my fish oils or drink more water or whatever it happens to be? Mental, that's the mood thing. So that's about looking at how we feel internally about the day ahead or the week ahead or whatever it is that we're checking in on that particular day. And food, have I eaten well? Have I had a good breakfast? Have I eaten lots of colourful food? Have I stayed away from the processed sugar that we know is not a good thing? And have I eaten some fish or some meat or whatever it is that I need? Just making sure that we're getting what we need from our food. And then I'm going to look at the next thing I talk about here is, sorry, just getting myself coordinated. Looking at priorities. So this is a really important part of dealing with lockdown, post-lockdown, any kind of anxiety. I think what tends to happen is everything becomes an immovable boulder and we feel like we have to shoulder it. So we need to recognize that we lose sight of our priorities very quickly. You know, we wake up in the morning and we go, right, this is what I'm going to do today. Actually, maybe I don't need to do that. How do we rationalize our decisions? You know, so this is something that I've kind of cobbled from another place that I found around priorities. So looking at what we prioritize over something else. So if we want to start eating well, we go to a healthy grocery store and we want to get a whole lot of organic vegetables. It's going to cost us $100. Gosh, that's a lot of money for vegetables. Wow, I'm not paying that. But hey, hang on a minute, I'm going out for dinner this week and it's going to cost me $100 to go out for dinner. That's okay because I'm meeting friends and I'm engaging. It doesn't make either one of them right or wrong. It just means let's look at the priorities. If you are continuously prioritizing getting dinner or takeaways over eating well, then there is a consequence down the track for your health. Supplements is another one that comes out. You know, it might cost you $100 a month just to kind of top up what you're doing. So bear in mind that supplements are meant to supplement a diet. They're not meant to replace a diet. They're not meant to replace nutrition. They are there because for some reason your body needs a little bit extra. Or a night out at the pub. Simple thing. Might happen every week. You might spend $100 or more. I reckon you couldn't even go out for a night at the pub on $100 anymore, which is going to give you better long-term value. So that's kind of really looking at what this list does. And I don't really need to go through the whole thing because you'll get it in the handouts anyway. So I think it's about kind of looking at some of the stuff that we justify to ourselves that it's not okay. It's not okay to take a holiday, but it's okay to go and spend $1,000. Well, you can't get an iPhone for $1,000. You'd be lucky. $1,500 on an iPhone versus $1,000 for a weekend or a long weekend or a short week break or something. You know, it's just about kind of reassessing what's going to give us the best value at that time. And it's not about need, it's about wants and priorities. And it's also about need. So it's not primarily about whether I need that new iPhone. If I've smashed my phone and it's broken, yeah, I probably do. I need a holiday as well because I'm a bit stressed and I'm not coping. So this is another thing that I discovered actually on PowerPoint. If you've got PowerPoint, it'll be on there as well. It's a really useful little tool. So it's basically just a wheel, and I'll show you in the next couple of slides how it works. But I use this in various forms with a lot of my clients. I have different types of this wheel that we use, and this I thought was quite good because it is on a screen. So, you know, if you spend a lot of time on a computer, I'm not encouraging spending more, but I'm looking at tools that you might find useful while you're on there. And so what happens is you put four goals in there, or four items that you want to work on that week. And I've just popped some in as an example. And then if you smile at a stranger, that's an interesting one. I often talk about this, and a little bit hard at the moment while we're masking up. So this was done obviously in lockdown when we weren't actually masking up inside anywhere, but because we weren't getting out anywhere. But you know, once trying to smile with a mask on is interesting. So I've done this for years. I often smile at people and they look at you. People look at you like you're an absolute nutcase. They're like, oh my gosh, do I know that person? They step away. It's really funny. So I do highly recommend it. It's quite entertaining. Complimenting a co-worker on something they've done, just saying, hey, that was a really good thing to do. Oh, we've got someone joining us. So yeah, so I think this is a really cool tool anyway. So this is the next phase of it. So what you do is you click on the little squares and it uncovers them, and you get the neat little funky colors underneath. So it's a simple tool that you can download on PowerPoint, so that I can send that out to you with the notes that come out later. So I just want to say hi, Linda. I had a few other people on. Some people have had a bit of issue connecting, so I'm not sure what's happening with that. So I've ended up talking to air, I think. Okay, so it happens. It was quite weird. I had people here and then they kind of wrote me a note and said, oh, and then I haven't seen them come back. So
sorry, yes.
you get
Sorry,
that.
sorry, you can't see me. I don't know, my camera's not working.
That's okay. That's okay. Just leave it off. That's fine.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. I've had so many technology fails over the last week that I've had to really practice my coping skills. And today was another one when I couldn't even get Zoom to work. Then it tried to update before I started doing this. So anyway, so I am recording this. You are being recorded. So if you've got any questions, just you know, say, hey, can I interrupt or something? So up to the bit about exercise. So this is the thing when we were talking originally when I was doing this in lockdown, and I think people were a little bit afraid to get out and about. And I strongly recommend for any kind of coping, the best thing to do is to get out of your head and out of the space that you're in. Get outside and do something that gets your heart rate up. So it could be just, you know, you're out your front door, round your block and come in your back door or something like that. And do it briskly, do it with purpose, and just, you know, you can rant and rave in your head, you can rant and rave out loud. I quite often go down to the beach and I talk to myself as I walk along the beach. I always have done. I throw shells into the water if I'm a bit frustrated. And it's a really good way of just kind of getting out and about. And exercise needs to be aerobic or cardio. You need to get the breathing up so that you're puffing, and you need to get the heart rate up so that you're getting that good endorphin kick out of it. Strength training is weight training, so you don't need weights, you don't need to go to the gym, you can do this at home. You can try some little tricep dips, some sit-ups, some push-ups, some chair push-ups. You can do all sorts of things at home. You can get some pretty cheap stretchy bands and do some strength training with those. So I've got a couple that I bought at Kmart, and I just use those, and it's amazing what you can actually do without even having to leave the house or leave your property if you don't want to. Yoga, because yoga is a moving meditation and it's mindful. It's not a religion like a lot of people seem to think, but it is a way of finding stillness and just kind of centering the body. And with that comes the stretching and the strength and the ability to then kind of just push yourself into a position where perhaps you didn't think you would be able to get to. And then walking. So walking, again, you know, if you're walking with a friend, you're often walking quite slowly and chit-chatting. That's great. That's the social connectivity I talked about a little bit earlier. But I think with walking, you know, again, it needs to be to the point where you're only just able to have a conversation. It's really, really important to kind of keep that level up. And we're not talking walking for fitness. We're not talking walking marathons. We're talking walking for mental health. This is all around our mental wellness, as opposed to, you know, training for an event. But what I get a lot of my clients to do is actually kind of set a target, something they might want to do. At the moment, it's a bit harder because events get cancelled at the last minute, but there might be some kind of fundraiser. There's the night walk that they do for breast cancer, things like that. They're quite good to build up to being able to do that. And you get out there and you walk around and you're interacting with other people, you're fundraising for a good cause, and there's a whole lot of benefits in doing that. And again, just getting out there and doing all of that movement is also going to support your immune system, which at the moment I think is one of the most important things that we can offer and do for ourselves. Another thing that I've stolen from an Instagram post, so the link, there's a reference to this at the end of the presentation. I just really liked it. So it's also very similar to something that I get my clients to do quite a lot of. And I think people who are highly stressed and kind of overreaching, taking on too many jobs, trying to micromanage too many things, need to be doing things like this. And this was a really simple body scan meditation. So basically just finding somewhere comfortable. You don't have to sit cross-legged. You probably need to sit, but you could do it standing if you wanted to. You could do it lying down. And then the idea is that you just close your eyes and just focus on your breathing. You're not having to chant anything. You don't have any visualizations to do. just breathe, just see what that feels like for you. Just breathing in and out. So you want to try breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth if you can. If you're not able to do that, then you're just going to be breathing in and out in a nice steady fashion, and just kind of see how that feels. What is it doing? And then what you do is you start bringing your awareness to different parts of your body. So the breathing kind of lets your body relax. It's centered, it's focused on itself. You start with the awareness at the top of your head. And the idea there is you just kind of move slowly down the body until you get to the very end, which is your toes. And as you go through that, you're observing any tension, any discomfort. Sometimes you might be aware of something. You might have a little bit of a headache. You might have an itchy ear. You might have a sore elbow, or, like I mentioned earlier, some injury to somewhere. Just breathe in, visualize the breath going into that space if you can. If you're not into that kind of thing, just breathe while you're there, and then let it go, and then bring your focus into the next bit. And you might find that you have to do it a few times to really kind of settle into a routine that works for you. You don't have to spend long. You might spend 5 seconds, you might spend 15 on each body part. So it's only going to take you probably 5 minutes to do the whole body at the most. And then once you've done it once, you can come back to your breathing, and then you can decide if you want to do it again. So I highly recommend looking at things like this. And there's loads and loads of different pages on Instagram, Facebook. There's websites. There's probably books in the library if you're a little bit of a book goer. And it's just finding something that works for you, that resonates for you. And I think there's no one particular way that works over and above any other one particular way for anybody. We're on to the immune support stuff. So I'm going to talk, this is where we start to get into a little bit about nutrition. It's just a very basic level of looking at what you need to do. So with immune support, my approach to immune support is always a very individualized and personalized thing. There's no one particular herb or supplement that I recommend over any others. But having said that, I do encourage people to start with looking at their digestive system. So as whilst it might seem a bit counterintuitive, your gut kind of rules your immune system, and we have lots and lots of different cells around the body that kind of that make immune fighting organisms, and different types of white blood cells that come out, and different types of immune responses. But if you are unwell in your digestive system, and that's basically from the mouth to the anus, everything in between is involved in your immune function. So that's always a starting point. And I've put a thing on there about what the bleep is, a microbiome. That might be of interest to you, because that's really a good starting point for getting your immune system back up and running again. Really important to understand what works for you. So you will talk to lots and lots of people, and they'll go, oh, I've tried this, and I've tried that, and I've tried the other. That's okay. Give them a go. Work out what you like. Make sure that you understand what it is. Write it down somewhere, because you're bound to forget. And then go back to that. When you can go back and say, well, when I had that sore throat last time, this is what I did, and this is what I took, and actually I felt better. So there's any number of different things that you can throw in there. How effective are complementary therapies is a question that I get asked quite a lot. So the thing with the type of work that I do, we've got the practical stuff, which is, nutrition and lifestyle changes. And then we've got the supplements and the herbs and things. And I have used these on my own immune system for probably close to 40 years. And what I have learned with that, and what I learned very early on, was that they don't work in the same way as going and getting a pharmaceutical medication. They don't suppress the symptoms. They work with the body's natural ability to repel and attack whatever is happening in your body. So it's a support mechanism. So what you find if you've got a cold, for example, is that if you get onto the vitamins and herbs, they're not going to necessarily clear up that congestion overnight. You're not going to go to bed and that's all kind of gone away. It might take a little bit longer, but actually you feel better through the process. So just bear in mind that some complementary therapies are going to take a little bit longer to work, but they're not going to have the same negative effects on your body. And I think things like vitamin C, which people take. You know, there's a lot of debate on different doses around that. It's one of my go-tos for me. It works really well. I know I have a number of clients who really don't get a huge benefit from it, and we don't put that in their immune system mix. The top 5 that I have on my list for the purposes of this is, top of the list is probiotics. So that's really starting with the gut. So I tend to use probiotics as a first line defense for any kind of immune response, be it an allergy or an infection or anything, along with whatever else that I'm working with. Elderberry and elderflower, so I take those in the form of tea, but you can get them as herbal extractions or tablets as well. Vitamin C, vitamin D, and food. So the vitamin D is an interesting one. This is always something that as naturopaths we talk a lot about vitamin D deficiency in our clients. A lot of GPs around New Zealand won't test for it, and they, you know, it is highly deficient in New Zealand simply because of where we are in the world and the quality of the sunlight that we get. Some people, again, are more prone to needing more vitamin D. The interesting thing with vitamin D, that it has been associated with a higher risk of it's been associated with the higher risk of hospitalization risk from COVID-19. So basically, I've written that out wrong, actually, that's not making sense. So low vitamin D, so vitamin D deficiency may increase the mortality in hospitalised patients. So if you're low in vitamin D, you've got a higher risk of being hospitalised and you've got a higher risk of dying from COVID. And there is research out there to found that. I just haven't put the reference in there. I'm not suggesting, for instance, that vitamin D is going to prevent it, but I think it could be one of those things that we have in our baskets to help support us through any kind of viral type cold and flu. Food is another one. So the way that I approach food and nutrition is that I like a broad spectrum plant-based option for food. And last week I did a webinar and recorded it with a woman called Dr. Deanna Minnick, who runs, she's a PhD, she's done a lot of research, and she has a program called Food and Spirit. She has books, and I highly recommend checking that out, checking her out and having a look at her approach to eating. And on here I've put an image that I've taken from from one of her posts, where we talk about variety being an essential nutrient. So top of the list for our nutrients is variety. And it's really important to eat a variety of colours every day. So you look at the types of food that you eat. If you're having bread every day, you might want to switch that out for something else. And it's also about including several colours each day, and they don't need to be the same colours. And you can include the brown and white foods in there as well, such as whole grains. Choose veggies over fruits. They tend to have a higher mineral content, and minerals is a really beneficial level to maintain in the body. Vitamins are good too, but if you had to choose one over the other, I'd be picking veggies because they have both the vitamins and the minerals that a lot of the fruits are just lacking, and we tend to be able to eat a bit more of it. They don't have the same impact on the sugars and things, but fruit's really good too for helping keep the digestive system healthy. So it's a 6 of 1 really. And you can have meat in there as well if you want to, or you could be just purely and simply plant-based, which is a whole other conversation. Eat your colours. So if you did nothing else, just eat the colours every day. And the Nat Chat that I was talking about with Dr. Minnick is on my YouTube channel, and you can also go to her website, which is deannaminnick.com. And there's a really cool download from there called a food and mood tracker. I haven't downloaded it here, but you can actually jump online and do that for yourselves. And I strongly recommend using it because it just allows you to then have a look at what you're eating, have a look at what your mood's looking like, and keep a good record of that. Alrighty, nearly there. So this was something I put in for the original version of this, and I've kind of left it in here just because I think these two things are really important. So these are things that I do through my clinic, Flower remedies, they're the batch flower remedies or the bark flower remedies, and you'll probably be familiar with rescue remedy, but there are loads of other remedies, and we tend to personalize the script for these. I use them, I don't know, I use them a lot, and then I use them not at all. It depends on whether I feel that they resonate for people. And the other one is homeobotanicals. So homeobotanicals are a bit of a cross between a herbal and a homeopathic, and again, they're done on an individual script, so it's not something that I just retail off the shelf. It is very much a personalized thing, but they're really cost effective and actually very effective in helping manage different conditions. So just something that I popped in there if people are wanting something that's pretty easy to access, and we can do it with a really simple conversation. So here we go. This is another place that I follow. It's the Life Matters Suicide Trust, but they have a really good lot of resources as well around coping. And I think, you know, one of the things that happens in lockdown is that we try and keep busy. We feel like we have to achieve lots of things. We come out of lockdown and we still want to kind of carry on that, but it's actually really hard. I found it this time around, I really struggled with the level 4, and we were only there for a couple of weeks, even with level 3. So it was, I think, about 3.5 weeks before I could come back to work and get back to my normal life. It didn't feel the same. I was really hesitant when we came out of it. I was hesitant to do stuff. And so I just kind of went back to the basics. And one of the things really is, again, about breathing. Just, you know, breathe in and out. Wake up in the morning, get up, get out of bed. You've already achieved something. Get dressed. There's another thing that you've done. Have breakfast. Wow, that's 4 things I've already done this morning. Aren't I amazing? Drink plenty of water. You know, all that sort of stuff. Just do the simple things that are going to generally make you feel better. I know one of the things for me, if I'm feeling a bit frazzled and tired at the end of the day, I'll go and have a hot shower, and I come out feeling really refreshed. And I talked earlier about taking my dog out for a walk at night. That's another thing that I do after I finish work, is just get out and about and kind of reset from my day. And I would never have done that if I didn't have this puppy to walk, and I didn't start doing it over summer. So we started doing it during summer when the days were nice and hot and long, and we'd go down to the beach with everybody else, and it was just amazing. I really enjoyed it. And I've carried on all year going out and walking at night. And what I do now is I take night photos of buildings and gardens and things that I wouldn't normally take a photo of, but at night they look really cool. So all of a sudden you start to see the world really differently. And I get in, and then sometimes I do them at like 9 o'clock. Sometimes I've even gone out at 10, and they tend to be a bit shorter. But I come back and I actually sleep really well. So the thing that I've noticed for me is doing that has improved my quality of sleep. Who would have thought that just a simple thing, and they're not long walks, they might be 10 minutes, 15 minutes, sometimes 20, sometimes half an hour, sometimes a bit longer. But, you know, just whatever else you do, just find a thing that you can do in that day that does actually help you. And I did have some questions here that came through with the registration. So there was a couple people asking about NAC, the N-acetylcysteine. So that's come up quite a bit lately in the news, and it's something that I've used in my clinical practice for quite some time. It is very much indicated in respiratory illness, and we do look at different kinds of dosing on that. So it is something that I would definitely consider as part of the basket of immune support, especially with the COVID stuff that we're dealing with at the moment. Vitamin C and vitamin D I've talked about, and I also got asked what would be the best ones to take if they contracted COVID. Now, this is, again, comes back to your individual response and the severity of your response. So I've worked with some clients post-COVID, and they've all presented completely differently. That their actual experience of the COVID illness was, they were vastly different, and their post-COVID stuff was really different. So I can't sit here and say one particular thing over another. The other thing that someone asked me was about pine needles, and so pine is another one that's come up in conversation around treating COVID as well. So the pine needles are really high in vitamin C, so often you can go and make a tea out of them. I don't particularly like the taste, it's quite bitter, but vitamin C itself is bitter, but you know, that is an option. And I know that you can buy pine extract supplements around the place. The other one I think that's a bit more common is the pine bark, which is the polyphenols, so that's your colors, and they are berries are very high in polyphenols, and they are very, very much about the anti-inflammatory response. So one of the things that Dr. Minnick talks about is inflammaging, which is the aging effects of inflammation. And I think the key to any of this is actually bringing our levels of inflammation down. So that's the end of what I've got to talk about tonight. I've managed to cut it a bit shorter than the first time I did it, which went on a little bit. And I thought I'd just share these. I've left them in here. So these are things that amuse me, and I quite often share these little cartoons, as most of us do. And again, the puppy one is really about perspective. So I talked right at the beginning about our perspective on things. And when you look at the puppy toys according to a human, you know, we've got all these funky things that we go and buy. My puppy's a classic. She likes socks and slippers. She likes gloves. She's chewed several of my gloves in the last few weeks, which is really annoying. The socks she doesn't chew, she just steals and plays with and dumps them and then comes back for more. And this is her in the photos. This is me and her on a walk. This is, I think, I'm trying to think where that was. I think that was when we did the Te Whiti Riser. So that's about a 7-kilometre walk that we did in Lower Hutt. One day when it was really, really windy, but not particularly cold. And the image at the bottom really is just one that I happened to take. I was trying to catch the pokers, but I ended up catching the whole front porch. And when I saw it when I got home, I realized that it actually represents a whole raft of color. And I'm always drawn to yellow. It's not one of my favorite colors, but I'm sort of drawn to having yellow in there, and yellow works really well for me. But I just really liked it with the wheelie bin cut lids and the different colours of the things in there, the yellow front door, even the orange cone. There's just a variety of colour, and it just obviously appealed. So that was taken on one of our walks, and I think this is about looking at the world slightly differently. If you're going out for a walk and you've got a phone with you or you've got a camera, take it. Start snapping away at things that you wouldn't normally snap away at, and it's a very interesting process, so I do highly recommend it. Yeah, so there's some references here at the end, and these will all come out to you in the handouts that I send out. So on that note, I'm going to stop sharing my video. Come back to my screen. There's Linda sitting there nicely. Did you have anything you wanted to ask or mention, Linda, while we're here before I finish?
No, not particularly. I also love Dr. Minnick's work, and yes, often referred to her charts and things because it's so colourful.
Yeah. Did you watch that webinar that we did on Friday?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I missed that one. I have to go back and
yeah, it's up on the yes. channel. It's really good. And unfortunately, the little pictures on the screen are really small, and we haven't quite worked out why that went. But anyway, you can. It was a conversation, so it wasn't really about the videos. It was about the conversation. It was really cool to talk to her. I really enjoyed that. So yes. That will be up, I think, on my YouTube channel. I think it's on my YouTube channel. It's also on the Naturopaths and Medical Herbalists YouTube channel. So anyway, to those that weren't able to finally connect, I hope that you enjoy watching this on replay, and to Linda, who managed to get in, thank you very much.
Thanks so much. That was great. Thanks, Debbie.
Awesome.
Okay. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye.